not first Tuesday, it's first Wednesday. Here they are, Nick and Beck.
Let's get to it, shall we, Ben?
Let's go. Let's do it. Want to introduce our guests here?
Yeah, why don't you introduce yourself?
All right, Ben Jarofsky, Chicago Reader, WCPT. This gentleman has been on my radio show twice. This gentleman has not been on any time, but we already cut a deal, Chicago style. And please read this week's reader story because it gets to what, it sort of talks about what Tim was getting at. Well, it doesn't talk at all what Tim was talking about then. But it's about the future development in the area and the impact it may have on this hideout, impact on your pocketbooks and everything else. So the city is definitely changing anyway. That's what I wrote about this week.
Which is always the case. All right. And I'm Mick Dumke, currently from ProPublica, former colleague of Ben's. And he just referred to you as that guy, but you do have a name, Larry Suffredin, also Cook County Commissioner. Well, let's get right to it, you guys. We wanted to talk about taxes generally, but of course, the tax that everyone is buzzing about around here is the Sweetened Beverage tax, aka the pop tax. Why? Why is everybody so worked up about this? Is this all the issues going on in Chicago and around the world, and people are worried about their civil right to drink Pepsi? Is that it? What's going on?
No, look, I think it's basically about their fundamental ability to be able to choose what they like to drink without having a tax associated with it, a penny per ounce. I'm Richard Boykin, Cook County Commissioner. I've been on the board now for almost 3 years, and I work with Larry Suffredin, Cook County Commissioner, and the other 15 other board members and President Preckwinkle. But this is almost like the Boston Tea Party, if you will, where the king put a tax on tea and, people decided to dump tea in the harbor. Look, I haven't seen it this much of an outrage in terms of a tax. Maybe since the last time President Stroger implemented the sales tax increase. The reality is in my district, people are outraged about this. I had a lady send me a letter from Oak Park the other day. She said, look, this tax that you all have implemented is wrong-headed. It's a bad tax. She says, I don't drink much soda pop. She said, I'm a marathon runner. I run 15 to 20 miles a week. And I drink Gatorade, and they tax Gatorade. Gatorade is a part of that, and fruit juices are a part of that. Diet soda, which has no sugar and no calories, are a part of that. And she says, look, that's wrong. She says, why tax my Gatorade? It helps me to recover. It helps me to get my electrolytes back. She says, when a child actually is suffering from pneumonia or can't eat, the doctor recommends Gatorade. And so she says, so we're taxing that now. She says, there is more sugar in cereals, more sugar in candy bars, and they're not being taxed like that.
Okay, as I reach for my delicious cold beer, I have to note beer is taxed. What's the big deal? Gatorade, electrolytes, drink coconut water, not taxed. It's juice. We're acting like this is a major imposition. We pick and choose things to tax all the time, and our tax system isn't consistent even before this. What do you say, Commissioner? What's the deal?
First of all, thanks for inviting me here. And I thought our deal was we were going to Chicago cut on you. You're telling me that the deal we cut was a Chicago deal to be on a radio show? I don't know. So I'm Larry Suffredin, and I represent the two northern wards of the city of Chicago, the 49th and 50th ward, and then Evanston, Niles Township, New Trier Township. So I go basically from Devon Avenue to Lake Cook Road and from the lake to Harlem. The reason we're here is because Big Soda is acting like Big Tobacco did 35 years ago. This has nothing to do with the tax. A tax is imposed to generate money to provide services to the people who live in their community. This tax had very little reaction at the time that it passed. But what's happened is Big Soda said, we lost in San Francisco, we lost in Oakland, we lost in Portland, we lost in Denver, we lost in Philadelphia. And they realized that the country was going to tax their product, which has zero nutritional value, okay? They're not selling healthy products. They're selling products that are zero. Now, this was not passed for health reasons. This was passed to get taxes. But sometimes when you pass a tax like you do on alcohol or on tobacco, you have a secondary benefit. And when you're running the largest healthcare system owned by a local unit of government in the United States, we have to deal with about $500 million of illnesses that we help pay for, and we subsidize with $300 million of your taxpayer dollars, that system to deal with obesity, to deal with diabetes, to deal with heart disease, and I always throw in osteoporosis. Diet cola is not good for you. Anything that has carbonation affects your bone density, and we have children who only drink Diet Cola, get no calcium in their diets, and these kids are having bone problems. They're breaking their bones when they shouldn't, when they're playing sports. So let me just tell you, we're here because Big Soda decided to take $7 million or $10 million, whatever it is, to try to protect their bottom line, not because anybody cared about the health of the people of Cook County.
All right.
Well, with all due respect to my friend, you can't tax your way to good health. He's right. He said one thing that was right, and that is this is all about revenue for the county. A county budget that continues to grow, continues to get bigger and bigger. And the reality of it is if we want to deal with obesity and we want to deal with health care, then we got to eliminate food deserts that exist in Austin, Inglewood, West Garfield, and places like that. We need to have a public health education awareness campaign around the county. Get parents to teach their children to make better choices. I again said cereal, and I went to the store. There is some cereal with more sugar in them than soda pop. And guess what? The cereal companies do market to children because they're at eye level in the grocery store, and they put all these fancy cartoons on the boxes and stuff like that to attract the children. I like Frosted Flakes, but guess what? They have a ton of sugar in them.
Are you willing to pay a penny an ounce for
and
Frosted Flakes?
I think that's the egregiousness of it. I think if somebody said, look, let's add a penny to a 12-ounce can of Coca-Cola or 2 pennies to it, and guess what? We're going to take one of those pennies and we're going to put it in the public health education. We're going to take the other penny and we're going to put it in the funding and running county government. I think people probably wouldn't have had a visceral reaction to that. But when you say a penny per ounce and you got a 2-liter that's 64 ounces and you add 64 cents to that, people are concerned about skyrocketing costs. And that's why we'll never realize the $200 million that we budgeted for this beverage tax, because most people are buying their sweetened beverages outside of Cook County. And so if we want to continue to make the county less competitive, then we ought to continue to layer on these taxes that send people to DuPage, Will, Lake, and Indiana.
Okay.
That is just such BS. Let me just tell you, this is Big Soda, and this happened with Big Tobacco. They abandoned our local retailers. Everybody who's called me, not called spontaneously, but called because either they were being paid $11 an hour or because they were being directed by their employers to call me, says, I'm going to shop in Lake County. I'm going to shop in DuPage County. Well, let me tell you, they aren't going to go shop there. But if they do, they're abandoning the businesses they say they're there to help in Chicago and in the suburbs. So what's going on here right now is that this was a tax to provide services to Cook County. You know, we're the 19th largest government in the United States. If we were a state, we would be the 19th largest state in the United States. We are one of the few governments that provide state-type services. And we're in Illinois, which is a state that is totally dysfunctional. In the last 12 months, the period this budget has been in place, the state has owed us, on a monthly basis, at the low point, $50 million, and at the high point, $140 million that we're not getting to run our healthcare system, to run our court system. You know, my friend says our budget's been going up and up and up. The reason it's gone up and up and up is that President Preckwinkle decided to put all of the elements of the budget into the budget before they were hidden. Our fundamental budget is still basically $1.1 billion for healthcare and $1.1 billion for public safety, running the largest court system in the nation, the jail, the clerk's office. We haven't changed that budget that much. But to provide the services, especially that my friend wants on the west side to deal with violence, that he wants for health care on the west side, these aren't services that necessarily are in my district, but I certainly support them because they are the essence of what this county is about. We needed revenue. So to put this budget together, and I had voted against the previous 2 budgets, we put this tax in place so that it would balance the budget, we would handle our pensions, we would handle our health care, and we would provide the services. And so we're now at a point where the people who didn't vote for the tax, but did vote for the budget, which I find amazing. I never voted for against the tax and then voted for the budget because it wasn't my role to say that how that money was spent. My friend decided how the money should be spent. Now he wants to take that money away. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to hold him and the others, if it does get repealed, to tell us where does the money come from to provide the services
Hold on,
you want.
before we go there, let's dial this back for just a second. Let's go back to the beginning if we can. By the way, this is awesome. It's great.
The problem is nobody's ever had 2
here.
county commissioners together on any program. Yeah.
Let's dial this back for a second. I don't think either of you were authors of this tax. I know you were an author. Did you?
I was.
You were okay. You weren't authors. Okay, so take us back to the beginning. What was the decision-making process that led to this particular tax? Why this particular tax? At what point in time did you realize more revenue was going to be needed?
Well, when we were in the middle of the budget process, we knew what our shortfall was. We knew what our costs were that we needed to provide the services we wanted. And so we looked at taxes. I'm opposed to any general tax. A general tax would be a sales tax. I voted against the last increase in the sales tax. We do not want a tax on everybody. The second general tax is the property tax. People don't realize that Cook County is the only government in Illinois, emphasize, only government in Illinois, that's operating under a property tax freeze that was imposed in 1994. We haven't changed our levy in all of that time. And so we weren't going to increase the property tax. So then you've got to look at specialty taxes, excise taxes. And we looked at tobacco, we looked at everything. This made the most sense. Philadelphia had done it, San Francisco had done it. There was going to be a referendum in the Oakland area, Portland. This tax made sense. We were dealing with empty calories. And again, it was not that big a deal until Big Soda decided it had to try to protect its bottom line and decided this was going to be the battleground. And so we right now are fighting about a cross of soda, not a cross of sugar, cross of soda, that these guys want to come in here to claim victory and try to stop the rest of the country from understanding how bad their products are.
I respect the distinguished gentleman, but this is not about Big Soda. This is about the Bloomberg ads. Bloomberg spent over $11 million.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought
ads.
for a second.
Big Soda
Going
hasn't
back to
spent
the
that.
beginning, though, Commissioner, Commissioner Suffredin said that there was a need for more revenue, and that these other kinds of taxes, going back to a sales tax hike, a property tax hike, were not acceptable. Those were not viable. Do you agree with that assessment, that there was those assessments, that there was a need for revenue and that those other kinds of taxes weren't desirable?
What I will say is this, is that there was a sales tax increase a couple of years ago that President Preckwinkle did. I voted against it. Regressive tax. This tax, regressive tax, hit the people who can afford it the least, the hardest. When we did the sales tax increase, she said we wouldn't need any more revenue. She said that would cover the pensions, that would cover the other runnings of county government. It came up short. And so, she says, well, we got to look for some more revenue. Well, what I say is we need to reinvent county government. And what I've discovered, and I haven't been on the board as long as Commissioner Suffredin and some of the others, but we got over 1,500 vacant positions that are budgeted for in the county government in 2017. Now, tomorrow, President Preckwinkle will release her 2018 budget. 254 of those vacant and open positions are being cut out of the budget. I'm happy about that. We don't go far enough, though. We need to cut more of those vacant and open positions, or we need to explain to the county taxpayers Why do we have them in the system? 700 of those vacant positions are at the health and hospital system. And what they've explained is that about 500 of them are now in process, and they're trying to hire people for them and that sort of thing. And, you know, but they won't tell you how many of them have been vacant for a year or 2 years. And so we need accountability, we need trust, we need transparency in the budgeting process as well. And we need collaboration. We have ideas. We need zero-based budgeting, right? We need to right-size every agency of county government. My friend has been here, and he knew in the 1990s, over at the JTDC, they had 900 minors a day. They had about 500 employees at that time. Now, we got about 229 minors a day. That's the right, you know, approach. We're going down in terms of the number of people who are being held in custody. But
This is
we
a
got
juvenile detention center.
right. But we got 697 full-time employees over there today.
Well, weren't some of those ordered by a court decree? I
Yeah, but
believe there was
we're
some
from
hiring
under,
some ordered.
But
yeah.
we're from under that, and we continue to grow the budget. We close down units at the JTDC, so that means you save money there, but we continue to expand in terms of the staffing. And so what I'm saying is we have to right-size every agency of county government. We need to actually go in and do it, and we need to do it together in a collaborative way. Now, some of the other things that I've proposed, the gentleman's right. Gun violence is a big issue. The county is spending hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of gun violence. $50,000 just to stabilize a gunshot victim at Stroger Hospital, where a bunch of them go. Already we've spent over $31 million this year just to stabilize gunshot victims at Stroger. Every gunshot victim that's killed, the medical examiner has to do an autopsy at taxpayer expense. This year we've had over 536 people killed. Last year, more than 800 people killed. And the other installations where we're taxed, the public defender, the state's attorney, the court system, the sheriff's office, in terms of gun violence. So we need to figure out a way, if we reduce the number of people who are being shot in the city and the county, we can save hundreds of millions of dollars. If we do something to reform our litigation process, he's on the litigation subcommittee and so am I. We both see the same cases. We both see the same kinds of mistakes that are made at the health and hospital system, at the jail, and other places. We need to train our employees better so that we can save the taxpayers millions of dollars in terms of legal settlements. The procurement process, again, I haven't been here that long. There are a lot of change orders that come before us. So get this. If you bid the lowest, generally you'll win the contract. So people bid the lowest, they come back 6 months later, and guess what they say? I can't finish the work. I need another $1 million or $2 million to finish. And so we, as the county board, say, okay, well, we'll give them another $1 million, we'll give them another $2 million. We got to reform these processes. Overtime. We got to figure out a way to reform overtime so that we can keep controls on that. Now, in the last quarter, the jail has been doing a better job at it, I must confess, in terms of holding those costs down. The health and hospital system's got to do it too. But there are a number of areas where we can reform county government, reinvent county government, and we need to do it in a collaborative way, and that's what I'm hoping for. And I'll roll up my sleeves and I'll go to work because I believe we all care about the county and we all care about our districts. But let me tell you, I don't want to make our county so uncompetitive that people won't stay there.
Okay, hold that thought. Ben, do you want to get in on this for a second?
One last thing I'll say. The International House of Pancakes in Forest Park, right down the street from my office, they've stopped selling soda because of the price. They've stopped selling it. And I'm sure other stores
That's
have
not
actually
covered by this tax, is
started
it?
doing that.
I mean, if they're serving fountain drinks, that's covered by the
syrup.
tax?
Yeah, it's they got to buy it.
Yeah. All right. That gets into the second part of this, the notion that this tax will deter people from buying soda. But before we go there, Larry, I have to say this. I hope you weren't going there when you said people in my district, Evanston, don't use the services of the county as much as people on the west side do. And I just have to stop you right there. The reason we have government, the reason like we tax ourselves, you know this, you're a liberal Democrat. You were heading into Trump territory almost with that one.
No. You misunderstood what I said.
Okay, then explain it.
I'm all in favor of trying to have these services as broad as possible.
Okay.
But the services, I have no health clinic in my district. We have very few county services up my way. We have one courthouse in Skokie, and that's it. That's the only county building. But what I'm saying is, I'm in favor of all these services. The most important thing a county commissioner does is pass the budget. Now, it's not real sexy. That's why I've voted for 11 budgets. I voted against 2 budgets. The budget is where we put things together. I am probably the most prolific amender of the budget because I'm trying to figure out how to do all the things he's just talked about. He put no amendments in the last time. He voted for the budget, saying he wanted all these services. We needed the $220 million to get it. I'm all in favor of trying to reform this government. Mike Quigley and I put together a whole lot of things together that we tried to do to reform this government. But what you've got to understand is that it's in the budget process that you do it. So if you don't put amendments in, it's hard after the fact to say, well, now take that revenue out, and then how do we keep going? There are 1,100 people who are working for the county today whose jobs are on the line because of what's going on right now. 1,100. Now, my friend says, oh, the vacancies. Let me tell you about the vacancies. Part of this, I think, maybe you're a little inexperienced. Many of those vacancies are funded at $1, okay? There are 254 the president's taking out that are funded. It comes to about $25 million that she's going to take out in what she's proposing tomorrow. But the vacancies aren't the way you solve the problem. The vacancies are a technique in the budget to try to end up having a balance at the end of the year to keep the county solvent. I mean, they are there not as some kind of a slush fund, but they are there to help us manage. One of the problems we have at the hospital is the reason there's 500 there. We have a
700.
process.
700.
700. We have a process that requires under Shackman to get hired to be a nurse at the hospital. It can take up to 9 months to have that happen. No nurse is waiting 9 months. Most of them go to work for somebody else. So we're constantly in a process of fighting to get the right people into the right spots. Is there a way to reform that? I hope that we could do it. But you know, at this point, the budget needed revenue. This was the easiest to me and the safest and the best tax to impose. Did I see this coming? Did I see Big Soda putting this kind of money to create the ruckus that's been created? No, I didn't. But it is a solid tax, and we're going to regret, if this gets repealed, we're going to regret it.
Well, was there any thought to changing the tax rate to stair-stepping it in? Instead of a penny an ounce, where if people are buying multiple liters of soda, as Commissioner Boykin said, you know, what if it was a quarter of a penny an ounce? And then people got used to it because it's a whole new tax. I mean, part of the problem here, clearly, I'm guessing we can all agree, if we can't, that won't surprise me either, is the implementation. It's not just the tax, it's the fact that nobody really understands what it's for. It's totally new to them. There's still confusion. I was arguing with my in-laws about whether orange juice is taxed, which it's...
Well, it's not if it's 100%.
If it's 100%, it's not.
All right, well, then it's not orange juice if it's not 100%. It's something else.
Right. Yeah.
But the point is that there's a lot of confusion about this. So I guess my question to both of you is, were there discussions about, is this not only the right tax, but is it the right amount? And discussions about how to let people know how it's going to work.
The tax rate clearly was debated, and pretty much the tax rate was determined because our hole in the budget was $200 million, and we needed to, how did we get to $200 million? Our problem certainly was in implementation. One of the things in the implementation that we wanted to do, because we wanted people to understand that this tax was on a product that they were using, to give them second thoughts about using it. I mean, just like with tobacco taxes and alcohol taxes, the revenue comes down because people reconsider should they use it over time. We needed $200 million the first year. So what we did is we said, we're requiring you to post it near the product. I mean, this is one of the few taxes you'll ever see that we encouraged the retailer to have a sign there that said how much it was, because we wanted people to know that we weren't trying to hide this tax. We wanted people to make a decision that Well, maybe I could forego that. I mean,
Oh,
yeah.
come on. Wait a
Yeah.
minute. You guys want the money. When Tony, I mean, I'm trying to sit back and let you two guys do, but when Tony brought out the tax, she said, if we don't have this tax, I'm going to start laying people off. And they were talking about translators at the county building, real public defenders. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to want the public to know about this tax, so maybe they see the tax, they go, I'm not going to buy the Coca-Cola today. They wanted you to buy the Coca-Cola because the tax was going to be used to plug the budget hole. And then when everybody got outraged over the tax, then they went to Plan B in the explanation, which is, well, really what this tax is about is to curb obesity.
No,
And
I've never gone to Plan B. This has been a revenue tax that has the ability to have some health benefits. You know, one of the problems here is Big Soda went over here, and then we got Mayor Bloomberg over here. The debate on this tax is at 30,000 feet. It's well above my level. When I talk to people, I talk about our budget. I said the most important job I have is to pass a budget. I wanted $200 million this year. I don't, if it goes down, as many taxes go down, that's the budget discussion for next year. She's presenting next year's budget tomorrow. She's presenting it with the $200 million in from the soda pop tax. If that is repealed next week, then we are going to have to make some very hard decisions. And those decisions are not just simple things that can be reinvented in government.
you have to raise property.
Well, let
We're
me
not
say
going to raise
this.
property taxes. I assure you that.
Let me say this, because I don't think it takes experience to understand this. There were over 400 layoff notices sent out when the TRO, the temporary restraining order, was put in place holding the sweetened beverage tax up. Some people actually got laid off even after the temporary restraining order was lifted. And some of those folks who got laid off were at the prosecutor's office, the state's attorney's office. And I asked the question, are you guys did you guys bring those people back? They said, no, they got laid off. And I said, are you hiring for their positions? They said, yeah, we're hiring for their positions now. And so, I mean, I think it was a crisis that allowed people to get rid of certain people that they wanted to get rid of, and then bring on other people that they wanted to bring on. Now, it doesn't take experience to understand that something's not right about that system or about that crisis that was manufactured. The other thing that I'll say is this. I'm willing to work with the gentleman. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Commissioner Suffredin. I happen to like him a whole lot. I'm willing to work with him, work with President Preckwinkle to try to figure out a path forward that does not include a tax on sweetened beverages. I'm willing to do that. I mean, I'm willing to put in whatever it takes to do that. Commissioner Suffredin was the architect of our independent board over at the health and hospital system, and he was willing to do that and work with President Stroger at the time, to deal with their fiscal crisis. So he has a lot of experience and know-how in terms of getting through these fiscal crises. But what I want to do is make sure that I listen to the people in my district. And, you know, the people in my district are overwhelmingly opposed to this. And my district covers Austin, West Garfield Park, West Humboldt Park, Oak Park, Forest Park, Bellwood, Broadview, Maywood, part of Westchester, and part of Hillside. And so it's a very diverse district, and a lot of county services there, a lot of county needs.
Well, we got to talk about some of the politics that have emerged since then. I was waving this around a second ago. I don't know about you guys. I get these in the mail. Like, you guys getting them too? A couple times a week. They are ridiculous in the eyes of some, but it's a flyer that basically it says kids get a lot more than they bargain for when they drink a can of soda, and it's warnings about the adverse health effects of drinking pop. Where I come from, it was pop, by the way, not soda. So, of course, it says at the bottom, paid for by Michael R. Bloomberg. So some are saying, yep. On the other hand, Commissioner Suffredin, you keep talking about big soda. This is obviously an attempt from critics of these industries to paint it with the same brush that tobacco companies have been painted with, big tobacco. You heard about that. But they've spread some money around too. Our friend Dan Mialopoulos wrote a column this week, Commissioner Boykin, about your law firm and its work for PepsiCo, raising the question, is this some sort of an ethics issue for you if you vote on this? You guys talk about this, it seems like this is about way more than the tax now. There's all sorts of outside money coming in here. There is sort of a proxy war going on here, is there not?
Well, but they're different kinds of wars. You've got the Bloomberg piece, which only talks about health issues. Doesn't mention the name of a commissioner. It talks about the tax. The other side, I've had 9 mailings in my district with my photo. The last one was the best because my 2.5-year-old grandson got the mail, said, Grandpa, Grandpa, and he's been carrying around for the last week the last mailing. And it's really a blessing he can't read because it basically says I'm an idiot. But they've got my photo in a bunch of small stores. They've made it personal, and they've set up a PAC to defeat commissioners. One of the things they're saying to people in other jurisdictions, we can defeat 2 of the Cook County commissioners, and that will stop this in other jurisdictions because elected officials will be afraid to do a soda tax. Now, he doesn't have an opponent coming from Big Soda, but the rest of us are dealing with crazy political realities caused by Big Soda. That's why
he may have an opponent coming from the other side.
Bloomberg's, dealing
right.
with this as a health issue.
Let's just be blunt. We've heard that you could have an opponent who is aligned with the other side here.
Yes.
Whether they're getting money that way, I don't know. It's very early, but are both of you, either of you, concerned about all this money coming in and not only your nephew, but other voters?
Grandson.
Your grandson. Sorry. Oh, how's your nephew feel about it? You have a nephew?
I haven't talked to him.
Well, let me first of all deal with the Dan Mialopoulos article. I thought it was a hit job on me personally, and quite frankly, I've sent a letter to the firm because I don't want even the hint or appearance of impropriety relative to the firm doing business with PepsiCo, and somehow I'm benefiting financially from it. That was the subject of the article, and somehow Dan stretched it and said, hey, the firm is doing millions of dollars worth of business with, PepsiCo and Coca-Cola. The reality of it is, I work at a law firm that has 800 lawyers, 13 offices nationwide. And we've done less than $10,000 worth of business, legal business, this year with PepsiCo. And so what I did is I sent a letter to the management committee at the firm and said to them, I don't want any proceeds as a part of my share as a partner from the firm from PepsiCo or Coca-Cola litigation-related matters or legal representation. I've also shared that letter with the ethics committee at the county because I've asked the county for an ethics opinion on this. I also understand somebody asked the state's attorneys for an ethics opinion on me. It's okay. So let me deal with the other part of it.
Well, one of the other parts of the article was that it was not just PepsiCo directly, but there was another organization that
School Nutrition
PepsiCo, that helps,
Right.
that
And-
PepsiCo
and-
helps
and
fund,
s-
that did a lot more business with
Right,
the firm.
right. But that representation was from 2013 to 2016. First of all, I did very little on that in terms of taking people to meetings in Washington, D.C. They made about, according to the article, $900,000 in billings. And so they said that PepsiCo made donations to the School Nutrition Association. I don't know. I have no idea. All I can do is tell you this, is that if I think there is a conflict of interest, I would recuse myself in a heartbeat. I think people know me to be an honorable guy. There was an assertion made years ago when I was a lobbyist for the county. My friend made the assertion that somehow I was conflicted because I was representing somebody against the health and hospital, while I spoke out for this company against the health and hospital system. And you know what I did? I terminated my representation from the county. I did. Not the president of the county board. I did. I sent a letter to him after I got wind of this gentleman's letter. And I said, you know what? I don't even want the hint of impropriety on me. And so the reality of it is that we're going to do things above board and by the book. That's the only way I know how to live. And you know, at the end of the day, I have to live with myself. I have to be able to sleep at night and look myself in the mirror. But I'm going to do the best that I can on behalf of the county residents, and especially those in the 1st District. And quite frankly, I'm told that President Preckwinkle and others are trying to recruit somebody to run against me. Bring it on. I mean, I believe that my record is strong enough. I have a record, and I'm also proud of this fact. I have perfect attendance on the board, have not missed a board meeting, have not missed a vote. And so, yeah, I've been there for almost 3 years now, and I hope to keep that all the way through. And so I'm going to stand on my record, and I'm proud of my record.
Commissioner Suffredin, what about you? Do you have wind of any challengers? Is this a concern of yours that they're going to, someone would mobilize big money against you?
I don't know if they'll mobilize big money against me, and I don't really care, because I think I'll have at least one primary challenger. I'll probably have one general election challenger. But, you know, that's the beauty of the American election process. We should have it. I look forward to having debates with them. You know, let me say one thing. I mean, Richard pointed out that there was a time when he was the county lobbyist, and as the chairman of the committee that dealt with that, I did have a problem. He was representing a vendor, and he was representing them before the same people who the next day he was their lawyer representing him in Washington. And he did terminate after I raised the issue. I want you to understand, and Richard and I are lawyers, and I've tried more jury trials than just about anybody you're going to meet. I've got 136 juries that I've tried to verdict in my lifetime. I'm used to advocacy like this and going back and forth. You know, I always say that today's opponents are tomorrow's allies. And so Richard and I will work together on a number of things. Tomorrow we'll be together on the litigation committee. But I go back to that this is a budgetary issue, and we've got to figure out some way to keep this county functioning and to provide those essential services, okay? And as he pointed out, he's got a lot more facilities in his district than I do in mine. And I'm accepting of that, okay?
Well, you're all part of the same county. It's not like his district. They only gave me these cockamamie districts back in 1986 or whatever as a way to like take care of politicians. But you know, like these districts were carved in stone when Moses came
All right,
down.
come on.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
representative. It's not just a
I-
cockamamie thing. It's kind of.
I mean, you're a part of the county. It's
I
not like,
have a lot more
the
force
West
for-
Side
But
has
it's Ben.
the courthouses.
Come on, it is
Ben,
fundamental.
Come on, man.
You got to have a budget that provides for the resources to be able to
I
provide
hear you,
these
but it's not
services.
like
And that's
the
what
West
this is.
Side's hospitals, the West Side's courthouses, like Evanston. You know, like if somebody does
Evanston has
something,
no courthouse.
Yeah, but you're going to
Evanston
go to
has no
that
clinic.
courthouse. If
Yeah.
someone gets hurt in Evanston, they can't afford to go to a
We-
hospital.
we are
Where are
happy-
they going to go?
We're happy to provide resources to the rest of the county.
Oh, well,
And-
that's
and-
nice of you.
Yeah. I mean, I spend more time on working on people trying to get them to appeal their property tax assessments probably than any other
No,
commissioner.
I hear you. I just I just don't want to hear that
me,
thing like Evanston. is-
Taxation is fair taxation, and you should never pay more than your share. So, you know, we're going to discuss this, and we'll see what the vote is. I have 1/17 of a vote on this matter on next Tuesday. He has 1/17 of a vote. We'll see if either side can get to 9. We'll see if there's a veto. We'll see if either side can override the veto. Whatever the result is, I've got to go back to work to either modify the existing budget or to try and create a new budget. I mean, one of the things I would hope that if there is a repeal, it wouldn't be effective until December 1st, so that this discussion could be in next year's budget and not have us scurrying around right now cutting services in a haphazard way. Government that provides services has to be consistent. People who need those services don't want to know that all of a sudden Oak Forest isn't going to be open tomorrow, or Provident Hospital's closed, or the mortgage foreclosure program is going to be terminated. Those things are important.
All right, Larry, let me ask you this question.
Well, the president has, and to Larry's point, the president has basically said that if we do away with the sweetened beverage tax, she's asking for an 11% across the board cut in all of the agencies. Now, I disagree with that, only because I think that there's some agencies where you can get more than 11%. And there's some agencies where you probably don't have to do 11%. But that's what she wants to do, an across-the-board cut. I think we ought to look at it in a scalpel approach and not a hatchet approach. And I'll also say this to the gentleman. I agree with him that the repeal ought to be for 2018, starting December 1st, going forward. And so I agree with that.
All right, let's say that this tax gets repealed, yet in a year, we have you both back on the show, and there's another budget deficit
It
at Cook
won't be as
County.
much acrimony then.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how much Big Soda and Bloomberg are spending money. But let's say there is a need for more revenue. What would you do? What other taxes are what other kinds of taxes are easier to swallow?
Progressive income tax.
All right,
There you go.
progressive income tax is one. So financial transaction, but we're talking about
Neither of
at
which
the
the
county
county
level.
can impose. Neither of which the county can impose.
No, okay, so Larry, this is a question I was going to ask you. I've had this conversation with so many people the last few months. We're supposed to be Democrats pushing progressive forms of taxation, and every Democrat I interview says, yes, I believe in progressive taxation, and we never seem to be any closer to it at any time. And we said, I think, seem to be going backwards and coming up with more regressive taxes, just like with that state funding bill that's giving money to private schools now. All right, so you ruled out a property tax hike. I think a property tax hike, as much as I love paying property taxes, I can't stand paying property taxes, but I think you'll agree that a property tax is more progressive or less regressive than a soda pop tax.
Well, it's fair, and if the feds don't take away the deductibility of it, it actually is a positive tax. One of our problems here is that we don't have a unified tax strategy. I mean, the Constitution of Illinois, whoever the lobbyists were, and they're probably now working for Big Soda, who got the revenue article written, it requires a flat tax, and it's a flat tax at a ratio of 5 to 8, so that your personal tax and the corporate tax can't be any farther out of sync, and that's crazy. That's why we don't recover well after economic problems or other kind of problems the way other states do. We're dependent much more on the sales tax as our recovery tool when there's a problem. Somebody should be sitting down and trying to do that. We need to amend the Constitution of Illinois. Not only do we need to amend the revenue constitution, we need to, if you want to talk about a financial transaction tax, we probably need to get that into the revenue tax. We need to amend the educational article, which says the state of Illinois shall be primarily responsible for public education. And yet the Illinois Supreme Court in 1990 said primarily doesn't mean majority. Tell me what that's crazy. We also need to amend the judicial article. We need to get merit selection of judges. I say to Judge Evans all the time, he's got 32 judges who aren't competent to serve in marriage court. And marriage court is where you stand there all day and say, do you say I do, you say I do, and I sign the license. Well, because you need the Constitution. We should have had a con-con.
See how hard it is just to get a progressive tax? You got to.
Well, yeah, because the Constitution prohibits
Commissioner
it.
Boykin wants to weigh in here.
So-
and I got a question about progressive tax. Okay.
So let me say this. County government needs to live within its means. We've been living outside of our means. And the reality of it is this. The hospital has just gotten into, in a real way, the insurance managed care business. And if that goes bad, you haven't seen anything yet, or if something happens with the ACA and it goes away, you'll see a devastating budget hole that we will have to fill only by probably a property tax. But let me say this, the $200 million. So I talked about those other things, the reforms. I mean, I think if we do those reforms, I think we save some money there. The other thing is that, and I talked to Jay Shannon about this, the $90 million in accounts receivables that exist at the hospital. That's money that insurance companies and patients who can afford to pay owe county government. Now I said to him, why don't we sell it to people who actually collect this debt? Why, sell it for 10 million, sell it for 20 million. Why should we hold it? And so he says, well, we could, but we think that we're going to be able to collect that money. Quite frankly, I don't think we have that kind of expertise. There are companies that do this for a living. Go out and collect that. Well, so we ought to sell it, 90 million. Maybe we get 20 million. Maybe we get 30 million. That's 30 million into the county's coffers that we can use. We need it. We need that money. The other thing is, President Preckwinkle recently, and it hasn't come before us yet, negotiated a deal with the Teamsters over at the jail. Sheriff Tom Dart wasn't in the room when the deal was cut. But this deal is going to cost the taxpayers money. These individuals get a $1,500 signing bonus. These individuals get, for the next 3 years, they don't have to pay for increases in their health care premiums. And all of us know that premium costs are going to rise over the next 3 years. Taxpayers have to pick up that cost, and they get other generous benefits. We have to bring the reality of the taxpayer to the negotiating table, to the bargaining table. And we have to say, wait a minute, the days of these generous benefit packages, and I'll be the first to admit I voted for them last year, but we're going to scrutinize this year in a big way because of the fiscal crisis that we have. They have to be brought there at the table, and they have to be leveraged. We have to say, wait a minute, we don't have the money, we can't do it. And then we have to hold a line on these salaries. I bet you we're going to see a lot of big salary increases in the health and hospital budget and some of the other budgets. We have to hold a line on these salary increases. If we do that, probably won't have to have layoffs, probably can avoid that, and probably can run county government in an efficient manner. That's what I'm saying.
But you can't get any of that unless you file some amendments to the budget.
Well,
And
wait a
I'm
minute.
somebody who has been working on doing that every year to try to perfect this budget, because all those salaries, everything is in the budget.
Let me talk about that. So the gentleman said I didn't file any. I put forward a tax, an Uber tax, and a tax on Uber and Lyft, $1 per ride each way.
All right, so wait a second. Why is that better than a tax on soda?
Hold on.
That's a user fee. That's regressive on anybody in the west side who wants to take Uber.
Hold on. The city is doing it. They use our county roads. They use our county infrastructure. And we're getting nothing. We're getting absolutely nothing from it. And the other thing, we had votes for it, but the president didn't agree with it. And so I didn't put it forward for a vote because I knew I didn't have the 9 votes to pass it. And the other thing, she had the lobbyist who represents them lobbying on behalf of the Sweetened Beverage tax, trying to get us commissioners to vote for it. He used to work for the county, by the way. I won't mention his name.
Okay, well, fair enough. I still say that's a user tax, and it's, you may like it more than the soda tax, but it's still a pay-as-you-use tax. And so my question for all of you is, it's actually great transition. We keep talking about progressive taxes, and that's really just a progressive income kind of, it's progressive based on income. What about does anybody think about taxation being progressive based on use or impact? And I ask this because I don't know about you guys, I often hear the pop tax mixed in with the city's plastic bag, shopping bag tax. And a lot of people are complaining about that too. I personally have zero sympathy for those complaints because it's like we are behind the times. I know nobody wants to have to remember to bring a bag to the store. Well, it's kind of like get over it. I mean, this is where we are. The whole West Coast, you can't get a plastic bag anymore. I mean, it's just like Ireland, you can't get it. Other places around the world, we are behind the times in this, and people are still bitching about that too. We all have to pay for the behavior of other people, and we just pick and choose the issues we decide to tax. And so I guess how is the Uber tax potentially different from a soda tax other than the fact that, different people are going to complain about it? How is it different, again, from the beer tax, from tobacco tax?
First of all, people who generally use Uber and Lyft have the means to do it. They generally are greater income.
Uber just came out with a study that the newspapers ate up about how it was helping people in low-income communities. All these drivers on the south and west side who were supposedly making all this money. Well, the argument about the drivers is the same as you're making about retailers with pop. Like it's gonna hurt them because ultimately this gets passed on, it affects them.
It doesn't get passed on to them. The way that we had it is that the user, whoever would call Uber, right, for a ride, if I called Uber, I would pay $1 extra, and it would go into the county, and I pay that $1 going one way and going the other way. And, Look,
The point is, though, that as a consumer, I'm less likely to use Uber if it costs me more to use it, just like I'm less likely, theoretically, to buy a 2-liter of Coke if it costs me more. I mean, that's what all this stuff, the bag tax, I'm less likely to use a plastic bag and more likely to remember it next time if I have to pay for the plastic bag. Is there something I'm
Well,
missing
yeah,
here?
But I would say that Uber riders, probably offending everyone in this room, Uber riders are wealthier by and large than the median income in Chicago. I would say that, and
That's
I
not
say
the
that as
point.
a guy who's never
It's-
even used Uber. Well, people who don't have cars, that's why we have public transportation. I mean,
It's the same argument about the soda tax. You don't have to drink soda either. You don't have to use Uber. I completely agree. You don't have to drink soda. So why is one better than the other? You don't have to smoke cigarettes. You don't have to drink
I
alcohol.
would say that Uber is a less regressive tax than a soda pop tax.
Yeah.
And to Larry's point, which is ultimately the contradiction in what Tony Preckwinkle did, is all these taxes, if they work the way you're suggesting, will decrease usage. So you can't anticipate the money you need to fund government. So it's either a public policy to deter people from smoking cigarettes, drinking soda pop, as Bloomberg says, or it's a way to raise money to fund your government.
But the argument is that your costs go down over time if fewer people are using these services. Your costs of maintaining the roads will go down. You're talking about the city is gobbling up this Uber tax, but yet they're using county roads. Well, the cost of maintaining the roads will go down if fewer people are on them, et cetera, et cetera. That's the argument.
What I'm happy
And
to
it's
hear.
the same for soda as it is for Uber.
What I'm happy to hear is there's at least a recognition that you need revenue to run government and we need some taxes. Now, let me tell you the interesting Uber Lyft story, why the proposal that my good friend put out didn't get much traction. Is in the city of Chicago, the traction was they allowed Uber and Lyft drivers to go to Midway and O'Hare Field, and that was the hook they used to enter into a fee-sharing arrangement. I'm willing to let them go to our county facilities. You can get free drop-off and pick-up at Cook County Jail and at Cook County Hospital. That's not where they want to go. We don't have a legal ability to tax Uber and Lyft. And it's unfortunate, but what we need is revenue, and we need to figure these things out. When we did the soda pop tax, it made sense. Now, you do every year projections on your revenue. All kind of taxes go like this. They come down. Each year, you try to make sure you have enough money for your budget. You budget 1 year at a time. So next year, we would have less money from soda pop, but it would still be revenue. But we need to be looking at this in context of all of the services. I mean, you mentioned earlier, I call it the Bermuda Triangle of Cook County, is the corner of Ogden and Damon. And Ogden and Damon, when you stand on that corner, if you look to the east, you see the emergency room, the busiest emergency room in the Midwest at Stroger Hospital, where many people who are in accidents or are injured in crimes are brought. If they don't make it, you look to the west, and you mentioned the medical examiner's office. And if you look to the south, you see the juvenile courthouse, representative of all our courthouses. We're spending on violence over $1.25 billion a year just in those that little triangle. And we've got to figure out how to subsidize and keep that going, because we don't generate enough revenue. You talk about the $90 million that's owed. About 4% of our patients are really with insurance companies of that 90 million that we'll probably get. The remainder is really poor people. They are people without insurance who are, if we spend time, we hire somebody to go after them, we're going to be chasing the wrong people. They don't have anything to pay us. What we've got to do, though, is figure out how the state of Illinois, which is what I was saying, either 50 million or up to 140 million a month, is that they pay us. And they haven't been paying us. Now, I'm going to say something that's heresy, as the guy who wrote the ordinance for the independent health care. But if the feds, if they were to go to block grants on health care, and if the state of Illinois was to screw around with the county care, the managed care organizations that are managing care for 1.1 million people in Cook County or on Medicaid, and only about 300,000 of those are in the county system, the rest are spread out, I'm going to say, why don't we just turn the hospital and all of our clinics over to the state of Illinois? Let the University of Illinois Hospital run it, because we can't afford it if we're not getting the support from the feds and the state.
All right.
Well, let me say
Quick,
this about
quick
the-
response, and we want to take some questions from the
about
audience.
the 90 million, because I talked to Jay Shannon today. Jay Shannon
Let him
says
know who Jay Shannon is.
Jay Shannon's
He's
the
a
head of
singer
the-
who was here on Tuesday nights, right?
he's the head of the health and hospital system. I spoke to him today. I had my budget briefing, and I said, Jay Shannon, why don't we sell this? He says, because we believe that we're capable of collecting most of it, the 90 million. And so he thinks he's got the personnel in-house to collect it, so he doesn't want to sell it.
Okay.
Bottom line.
All right, questions? Yes, ma'am. First of all, shout out to Commissioner Boykin for his work on the opioid epidemic. And I think the gist of the question was, how are we going to make sure we have the funds to continue the programs that are in place to prevent more overdoses and all the resulting misery that goes along with that?
Well, look, we have to go to work. We have to roll up our sleeves, and we have to figure out how do we make up the shortfall, the 200 million. We have to be willing to go to work. I got a 10-point plan that I put forward. And, you know, with all due respect, let me tell you so. I'm not a genius when it comes to this stuff. I'm a practical person just like you all. Forest Preserve came to me to share with me their budget for 2018. They're closing or eliminating 10 to 12 positions, which will save them over $1 million, over $1 million. They're doing that, eliminating open and vacant positions. That's what they're doing. Board of Review, they came to see me. The budget office demanded that they close 10 positions to have a savings there. And so there is savings in these open and vacant positions. There is savings if we can figure out how to do something about this horrific gun violence and reduce the number of people being shot. There is savings if we can figure out how to reform our litigation process. There's savings if we can figure out how to reform, some of these other processes, the procurement process and others. I mean, I'm willing to go to work and do it. I mean, just like they said, if we reduce the number of people drinking soda pop, disagree with it, but they say if we reduce the number of people drinking it, then the number of people with obesity and health issues will stop coming into the hospital or healthcare system. Don't think so. Let me tell you, unless you eliminate the food deserts, which is the root cause of all this stuff, and give people education around public health to make choices, these kids are going to continue to eat Cheetos and Doritos for breakfast. They're going to drink their sweetened tea. They're gonna eat the things that are bad for them because they don't have any other choices.
What about treatment? I mean, that's what this is paying for, is treatment for substance use.
I'm for it. I'm for it. In fact, I want treatment on demand. Well, I mean, that's what the argument is. So the argument from the proponents who say that if you repeal the taxes, that the sky is falling. It's the same argument that was made when the judge issued the TRO. Now, if we don't have $60 million to take us through the rest of the fiscal year, when the judge issued the TRO, the county finances were on the brink of disaster. Something's wrong with that. And so you don't have a disaster just because you can't collect a tax for a month. But then she turns around and sues the same people, the retail merchants, for $17 million. She takes the county into a lawsuit for $17 million. And she uses the county state's attorney. She uses our manpower, your tax dollars, my tax dollars, but yet we can't afford to do these things. But yet she did that. So I want to work with
Let me talk about
others.
opioids rather than suing retail
Yeah.
merchants. The opioid issue, and this is, I think, what the question is really aimed at. We're under a Department of Justice consent decree, and we have to provide a level of care for people who are in the Cook County Jail. It's kind of a fascinating thing in America. The only place where you have a constitutional right to health care is if you're locked up. Right. The rest of us here don't have a constitutional right to health care. The problem is the services that you've described where we're giving people drugs to take home and we're trying to follow up on what happened when we detoxed them when they came into the jail, is not going to be part of that required care. And so that is expendable. And that's my concern, that it will be cut. And then what we're going to do is start this cycle again. I held hearings about the number of people we detoxed multiple times, either at the jail or at the hospital. We had people that we were doing 3 times a year. They didn't do 4 because they were dead on the 4th time. part of the problem was after we detoxed them, we released them, but we didn't give them any aftercare. We didn't give them the Narcan and the other things that they are now leaving the jail with to try to keep them alive. That's where this budget becomes extremely important. We've got to make sure there's money for that. We've got to make sure for those that aren't in custody that we do the mortgage foreclosure program. The mortgage foreclosure program has been the most successful thing in keeping people in their homes in Cook County over the last 5 years of the crisis. If we cut that, we're just letting these people be at the whim of the bank, and they're just going to go to court. They're not going to know what to do, and our judges are not going to have any option but to give the house to the bank. We've got to make sure that these are the kind of things that are in the budget. That's why when we do these budgets, we fight for the kind of amendments that make sure that they're there. Now, the first thing you got to do is agree to what the revenue is, and if we lose this revenue, we are in a real jam, because we don't have the kind of reserves that maybe it would be nice if we did, but we don't have them. And on the healthcare side, we talk about it, we become an insurance company. When we're an insurance company without reserves. We're providing a lot of healthcare as an insurance company, but we're having to pay to third parties, and we owe over $100 million on an average month to third-party people who are providing healthcare to our patients. We're only doing, I think, about 40% of our county care people within the county system. And we've got to figure out ways to balance that, because that's out of whack. But it's all budgetary, and that's why this job is not a glamorous job. I call it, we're stealth government. People ask me all the time, what the hell do you do? What is a county commissioner? I mean, I don't pick up your garbage. He doesn't pick up your garbage. You know, most county roads are not that identifiable. So they've got to figure out what do we do? And I always say we're the glue. We're what keeps society together, and we need revenue to do that.
All right. Next question. By basically saying we need a leaner government and we've got to cut taxes, are you disinvesting in the government and the services?
Absolutely not. Let me tell you this. What I'm saying is the county government needs to live within its means. What I'm saying is this. We need the services, and I agree with that. But I think we can get the services if we look at ways to reform and reinvent county government. I think this is a perfect opportunity to do it. And quite frankly, I think the budget process is too constricted. I think it needs to be a longer process, several months, that we actually include all of the commissioners in terms of helping to shape and come up with ideas. And if they're reasonable ideas, let's take them and put them forward. So I'm going to put forward a number of amendments on this budget that will speak to a number of the issues that we're most concerned about. I'm confident that at the end of the day, we will have a county that works, and that works for those who can least afford it. That's the mission of county government, to take care of the least of these, those who are the poorest of the poor. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to make sure that that happens. I mean, I happen to be a minister as well, and I happen to believe in the Matthew 25, I think it is, where it talks about, when I was hungry, that you feed me. When I was naked, that you clothe me. When I was in prison, that you come and visit me. When I was in the hospital, that you come and see about me. So I believe in that, and I would not ever disinvest in our government. I think that's irresponsible. I'm really consciously trying to figure out, how do we get there? How do we make sure that we reform the county government in the way that we can? And at the end of the day, if we need the revenue, then I'm willing to lay down on that sword. You're looking at a person who carried the tax for ammunition. I carried that. That was my bill. I passed it. And so we have a tax on bullets in the county. That was my legislation. I'm proud that the people supported it. But, I mean, it's not that I'm opposed to taxes. It's, I want to look at county government and figure out, how do we make sure that we right-size every agency and make sure that we got a zero-based budget process that makes sure that everything is running efficiently and effectively for the county taxpayers. That's what I'd say. Thank you.
I could argue that a tax on ammunition is regressive too, but philosophically, of course.
The NRA did.
Yes, sir. There was a proposal 8 or 9 years ago, a report about reinventing Cook County government. Do you, either of you know what of that report has been implemented?
Sure. The biggest one is the combination of the county clerk and the county recorder's office. He also had wanted to go a little further because he wanted to include the county clerk, not the county clerk, the recorder of deeds, county clerk, treasurer, and assessor into the reconfigured government office. But we'll probably save $1 million a year with doing just the clerk and the recorder of deeds. A number of the other things that he talked about in terms of how we do accounting. One of the problems was that numbers we were getting were not always that good at what we were doing. I would guess that a third of that report has been implemented. I periodically pull it out and look at it to see if there's something more that we might try. Like a lot of reports as they get older, the issues are dated because the government has changed in the way things are happening.
Okay. Last question. Yes, sir. Why did you decide not to run against President Prenkwinkle, Commissioner Boykin?
Well, let me say this. We considered it, and at the end of the day, I thought that my best and highest use as an elected official was to continue my service in the 1st District and representing my constituents. The lady who represented the district before me was there for 16 years, and we've been able to deliver a lot of resources to the district that hadn't come prior to me being there. I've had to fight for everything that I've gotten, tooth and nail, I must confess. It has not been easy, but that's what I'm made of, and I'm looking forward to, if the voters will, send me back in 2018, so I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
All right. One more question for you guys. What is your prediction for the vote on the sweetened beverage tax next week? What do you think is going to happen?
I think the tax will stay in place. I think that the tax is so essential to the financial health of the county and the provision of services, especially those at the hospital, that it would be irresponsible to repeal it.
I think the tax will get repealed 9/8.
All right. Do you have a real quick question?
Really
Yeah.
incredibly quick. What is your comment, either of you, on the speaker's plan to pass state law to eliminate?
Yeah. Speaker Madigan's proposal to pass a state law that would get rid of this tax. Real quick, Twitter version answer here.
Well, it's not the speaker's proposal. It's Representative Mussman and Representative McAuliffe. They put it in for political reasons. It's helping them get their signatures signed. I don't think anybody is serious in Springfield about that.
I think that those kinds of proposals kind of tie the hands of county government. But if the proposal gets through Springfield, and I'm sure that the people of the county who oppose this tax will be very happy.
Thanks to both of you guys. We really appreciate it. No strong feelings about this tax at all. Thanks to all you guys for coming. Really appreciate it. I think Tim wants us to get out of here fast. There's supposedly like a rock show or something happening. I thought these guys were rocking pretty hard, but we got to get out of here. Thanks. See you guys next month. Thanks to sound guys. Thanks to Chris for taping. See you next month.